So today's shiur is not directly associated with a specific posuk in this week's parsha, but a general discussion which could be extremely relevant in many different situations in our lives. And it is, what are the boundaries of lifnei iver lo titen michshol? When a person wants to engage in any activity which is legitimate, not necessarily a mitzvah, but he wants to do something which he is allowed to do, to what degree does he need to bear in mind or bear responsibility how this will affect others, and maybe as a result of what he is engaging or wants to do, they might do an aveira. So this week's Parshas told us, is primarily two stories. One is about the Bechoira. Esav comes back from a tough day in the woods, out there all day, running up the hills and down the hills, and catches nothing, comes back frustrated, tired, exhausted, and he says, I'm going to die, I'm so thirsty, give me something to drink. And Yaakov says, oh, of course, I love you, but please sign. And he says, well, what am I signing on? I'm just going to come in, sign, we're doing some business. And Esav says, I'm dying, give me something to drink. And Yaakov says, please. And he buys the Bechoira. And then after that, story number 2 seems to be even more complicated. Esav forges his identity. In modern law, that's a crime. It's a federal offense. Forges his identity, and his old father never doesn't see. And I think Yaakov could guess that Esav wouldn't be very happy about this. And he is machshalim in loisisna sochicho belvavcho. Well, I don't imagine they loved each other that much before this story happened. But so does Yaakov bear any responsibility on what he is causing Esav to feel or do? Esav actually wanted to kill him, and he had to run away to Lavan, as we see towards the end of the parsha. So let's discuss the lav of livnei iver lo yisitan mechshol. The basic source number 2 on our sheet. Menayin shelo yesh et odom kois yain shel lo zeram. Ve'ever menachai lebnei noach talmud lo yim lifnei iver lo yisitan mechshol. Pshuto shel mikro is putting an obstacle in the way a blind man is walking. He doesn't see, and he might fall and hurt himself. That's the lav of livnei iver lo yisitan mechshol. Chazal give us an additional interpretation. Livnei iver lo yisitan mechshol is also causing him to transgress, to do an aveira. And that is no less terrible than a physical mechshol, causing him to hurt himself in gashmias. The same would apply to causing a person to hurt himself in ruchnias. I think there's a ravisa in kois yain lenozia, and another one, eve menachai le benoyach. There's a chiddush, you're not allowed to hurt a benoyach in ruchnias. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them sheva mitzvahs, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants them to be mekayim those mitzvahs. And therefore it's an aveira to cause them to violate one of their sheva mitzvahs. That's a revusa. Kois yain le'nozer is also a revusa because Eva Menachai is a cheftze de isura. It's prohibited to everyone, Jew, non-Jew. Yayin is into itself not a cheftze de isura. The whole world is entitled to enjoying wine. And even this individual, if he waits another 30 days, he no longer is a nazir, he brings his karbonis, he's entitled to drink wine. Kamash Malan, still there's an issa of lifnei iver lo yisitan mechshol, because right here and now, it's quite obvious that he wants to drink wine, and he's not allowed to, and therefore, it's lifnei iver lo titen mechshol. Is there an issa of lifnei iver when I'm not giving him a cheftze in which he actually will do an aveira? It's just a result. It's indirect. Samach Gimel Masechet Avodah Zorah. Oy merodem lechamora velepoyelav lechu veichlu b'dinar zeh tzeu v'shetu b'dinar zeh ve'enei choishes lo mishum shvius v'lo mishum ma'isa. Which means you have workers, and besides the pay that they're getting, the wages, according to the agreement in the company, you give them lunch, you supply them food. You can't give them acholas asuros because that's lifnei v'lo michshol. But you could tell them, go to the local supermarket, go to the local deli and buy whatever you want. And it's a my cheshbon. I have an account there. And you don't need to care what they might buy. It's their responsibility. It's not on me. They could buy kosher food. They could buy non-kosher food. It's not my responsibility. So here, it is a step further away. I'm not giving yayin lenozir, eva menachayla benoyach. I'm giving money. And therefore, it's not my responsibility what they're going to do with that money. They could save the money, they could buy whatever they want, and therefore there is no lifnei evreisit mechshel. However, the Ritva says that the heter is only because it's a suffix. They have the option to buy kosher food. So if the only restaurant in town is a treif restaurant, I cannot do that. That still would be considered lifnei evreisit mechshel. So let's have a look at the Ritva. V'yim tome v'lo me'enei choishes b'amoritz mipnei lifnei evreisit mechshel. V'yesh loimar. The mahocha sham'inan, the kol she'enu ninoisem lo yu isa atzmai v'adov esofek, emikach esed amlav, ein bo mishum lifnei evreisit mechshel. It's not because he's a non-Jew. A non-Jew and a Jew have the same thing, legabe lifnei ever, as we see, eva menachai lebnei noyach. But it's a suffix. If it would not be a suffix, it would be lifnei ever. Even though what I'm giving him is money, I'm not giving him a chefza in which he violates a mitzvah.
Matan l'goy lifnei dayan, isn't that also not a chefza?
What?
A matana to a goy lifnei dayan before his chag. There's also no chefza.
It's a boy in the Gemara of a Avodah Davav. What is the issa to sell an animal or other foodstuff to a guy? Is it lifnei iver because he's going to bring it to kroives la'avodah zorah, and in that case it is a chefza, or is it mishum da ozil v'moida? I'm giving him a gift. He's going to go to church and thank his avodah zorah, and then I'm over on lo yeshama al picha. So the Minchas Chinuch and Mitzvah Pevov asks, and why ain't I over on lifnei evreisit mechshel if he's ozel amoida? So one might argue because it's indirect. There is no chefts. Maybe that is the reason there is no lifnei ever. But that's not right, as we will soon see in our next source. So the Bach asks this question in Yeridei Semekuf Mem Ches. And the Bach says that a goy, a non-Jew, has no aveda to thank avodah zorah. His aveda is only not to be oved avodah zorah, not to worship avodah zorah. But to say thank you to avodah zorah is not a prohibition by a non-Jew. And the Taz disagrees with the Bach. Does anybody know what was the relationship between the Taz and the Bach? Are you aware? Huh? Were they related? Who knows? What? Who was whose son-in-law? The Bach was? Father-in-law? Yeah. And they seem to have an interesting, complex relationship. I didn't check it out statistically, but I think most of the times the Tach quotes the Bach, he disagrees with him. Well, that's the nature of halacha. Ein maso panim la'halacha. I wasn't involved personally with the Bach and the Taz, but I want to assume that they had a beautiful relationship. But when it comes to halacha, ein masapurim la'halacha. And the Taz disagrees with the Bach. And the Taz says, saying thank you to avodah zorah is like praying to avodah zorah, and it is kibbul of be'eloha, and that would be a prohibition even for goyim. So why would the Gemara say, im ozel umoida, I am over an lo yeshom al picho, and why not Lifnei Iver. Maybe because it's a suffix. Maybe he will, maybe he would not. Maybe he's a believer, maybe he's an unbeliever. And even if he is a believer, maybe you won't say thank you to us. And the Ritva just said, when it's indirect, there is no Isaf Lifnei Iver if there's a suffix. Kedushin Lamed Beis. And this is the first source in today's Shiur in which there is Lifnei Iver without any Hefze at all. I'm just doing an act, and I bear responsibility for the response of another person that I caused. Ravina Koresh Yeroem B'Yampe Rabbe Berei. Ravina was the father, Rabbe was the son, and Ravina wanted to check the level of anger of his son. So he took one of his best suits or pajamas or whatever it is, something that his son very much liked, and he tore it to check when his son became angry. Omer Ezel ech ze irotach iloi rotach, and the Gemara asks v'dil marotach v'kover alifnei Iver said mechsher. And if his son will get angry and he'll speak disrespectfully to his father, and he will be over on kibud avim, the father bears responsibility. Lifnei Iver said mechsher, you caused your son to be disrespectful and to be over avera. The mochalele yikrei, afshe mochal al kavoidoi mochul. From this Gemara we see that I didn't give him a hefze, which he did in avera. I just performed an act, and he responded, and I bear responsibility.
Isn't getting angry to bear?
Getting angry into itself is not an avera. It's a midah yisrois. It's not a good midah, but it's not a prohibition. It's not an avera. And that's why it is only an avera because it was his son. And Rashi says he'll say something which is not respectful. But just making him angry into itself would not be considered an avera. Kas is one of the midah yisrois, but it's not an avera. And therefore there would be no lifnei Iver on kas into itself. Bava Metzia Ayin Hey seems to be a gewaldige chiddush. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, kol mi sheyesh le mois, umal va'oisen shelo be'edem, oive mishim lifnei Iver lo titen mich shoyom. If I give a loan to a person and I don't have edem, or I didn't demand, I didn't request he sign Chasimas Yodai that he got a loan, I'm over and lifnei Iver. Machlokes Rashi and Rambam, why? Rashi says, well, the borrower looks around, right and left, v'yifin koi v'choi v'yaki ein ish, and he might decide to say lahadam, lo hayu dvarim olam. He might decide to deny, you never gave me a cent, don't owe you anything. And therefore the malva is that seems to be very far-fetched. I bear responsibility if the guy wants to be a thief and a liar. Doing him a favor. And if he decides to steal my money, I am over and lifnei Iver. You know, it would seem like I went to sleep at night and I didn't lock the door. Somebody broke into my house and he stole my stuff. Would we say, you're over and lifnei Iver, or said, Michshol? Should have locked the door. So I gave a loan, I did a mitzvah. It's his responsibility to repay that loan. So why do I bear responsibility? The Rambam has a different pshat, and the Rambam says it's lifnei Iver because he might forget to pay. It's not that we think that he might decide to lie and to cheat and to steal my money, but he might forget. So that is also a chiddush, because it's a sheval taisa, it's a shoygeg. It might even be defined as an oines if he forgets. You know, people are forgetful. And forgetting is a natural phenomenon. We all forget some things. Well, you're not supposed to forget when you owe people money. But maybe writing a note would be the responsibility of the borrower, not of the lender. So the Ritva in Megillah Chov Ches says that this is a midas chasidus. But the Gemara says, Oive Mishem Lifnei Yever Lo Yisit Michshor. And it's quite a doichik to say, it's not Lifnei Yever Mamish, it's just like Lifnei Yever, but it's actually a midas chasidus and not really an aveira. So I would like to ask you, Choshev Talmidim, is the Gemara in Kedushin Amid Beis and Bava Metzia Ayin Hey the same level, or is it different? And why do I have difficulty understanding Bava Metzia Ayin Hey, and I have no difficulty at all understanding Kedushin Amid Beis? What is the difference between these two sugyas? I ask a very simple question, and I actually answered the question even before I asked it. What would be the difference between the two sugyas? Because the response of a child, and every person, especially a child, when you break something before his eyes, that's instinctive, that's natural, that's to be expected. That is the most natural response. Person is hurt when you take any possession that's precious to him and you tear it and you break it. But the response of a person that gets a loan wouldn't be to lie and to steal. The response would be to say thank you and to do his best and his utmost to be makir toiva and to repay that loan. So a father, when his entire intention is to check whether his son will get angry, so you need to take account that he will get angry and it'll be oivan kibbud avim. That is a natural response. It would be strange if he doesn't get angry. That would prove that he's a tzaddik like Rabbi Sol Salanta or Rabbi Zusha Manipoli. So, therefore, the father bears responsibility. But why would a malva, a lender, bear responsibility if the borrower doesn't pay his loan, even if the chashash is shichacha? He's not supposed to forget. And therefore, Bava Metzia is a far bigger chiddush than Kedushin Lamed Beis. An interesting tshuva negris Moshe. Let's have a look at the shaila. Lasas baboti akayetz minyan beleil Shabbos b'mukim sheyadua the balas. Who knows what this word is? Yeah, Reb Moshe writes English words in Lashon Kodesh letters, and it's sometimes very amusing. Sheyadea the balas are bungalows. Today there are no longer bungalows. Developments. It's the new word out there in the mountains. So when I was a kid, there was bungalows. A zillion mosquitoes, 150 mice in every bungalow. And we had an air conditioner, which we called Old Clunker. Made as much noise as a tractor. Those were bungalows. Vasas babote akayetz minyan beleil Shabbos b'mukim sheyadua the balas bungalows techaber ba'atzma es elektri im yesh yisel lifnei yever. So people out in the mountains in the summer rented a house designated to be a shul, and then they realized that the woman that owns that house and she rents it out is Jewish, and she's not the Shema Mitzvahs, and she comes after the davening is over, she puts out the light. So do the mispalalim bear responsibility? Are they even if they ever listen michshel? And I have a very simple question. So why wouldn't they use a Shabbos clock? So obviously, Reb Moshe Asa is a Shabbos clock. So they went in the opinion of Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe was really the Poisek Ador. But this is the only psak, I think, from the Eigas Moshe that nobody accepted. And I'm not aware of anybody that doesn't use a Shabbos clock today. But Reb Moshe was against Shabbos clocks.
For lights, he said to leave it, no?
Yeah? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah? Oh. So I need to recheck that. So maybe they were even firmer than Reb Moshe. So using a Shabbos clock wasn't an option. And Reb Moshe Paskins, Lifnei yever lo yisiten michshol. Akol ponim, we're reading the last line. Im yadua shetechaba, achar sheyispar lo, osa lahadlek. אפילו שבשביל זה לא יוכלו לספר בציבור. ואם הוא רק חשש בעלמא שתחבר, מותר להדק דלעיני לפני ולא חשיני לחשוש בעלמא. But if we know And we see, she comes Friday night, she puts out the light, daven b'yechidus, you're even lifnei v'los mechshel. And to me, that's a big, big chiddush, because there is a limit. How far does a person bear responsibility? He's davening. And if she decides to put out the lights, that's her business. Why do we bear responsibility? There must be some limit to lifnei iver lo titen michshol. There's another tshuva, which is not on our sheet, should have been, Chelek Gimel Simin Tzadik, same Chelek. And Moshe deals with a troubling question, and I was asked that question 100 times. Sometimes you have a school, a Jewish school, primarily schools that are based on Kiruv, and we know that some of the kids sitting in the classroom are not Jewish. And you're not allowed to teach Torah to someone that's not Jewish. And Achigi Daf Yud Gimel, we learn, Lo yoseken l'chol goy mishvutum al yadom, and it's also lifnei yever lo yisit mechshel, because akim she'osek b'Torah chayev misa. So what does a Rebbe or a teacher need to do when he knows he has 20 Jewish boys in his classroom and 5 non-Jewish boys? What is he supposed to do? So the Moshe writes, there is no lifnei yever. I do my job. And if somebody wants to be over an Aveda when I do my job, it's not my responsibility. I didn't bring them into the classroom. They come. It's not me. And I'm teaching Torah, and therefore there is no lifnei yever. I think these two tshuvas are a stira. Kal v'chomer advorim. If I bear responsibility after I finish davening, because that old stingy lady is going to put out the lights, and I'm over in lifnei yever, teaching a classroom. I directly teach non-Jews, and they're not allowed to learn Torah. Why wouldn't that be lifnei yever? So these two tshuvas seem to be so. My psak is like Rav Moshe's, but my reasoning is a totally different one. And I say the mitzvah to teach Jewish children Torah overrides the Aveda not to teach non-Jews. And therefore, the Rebbe doesn't have an option to send kids out of the class. They'll be fired. And chas v'sholom, we don't want them to do that. We want to be cut of these children, hoping that ultimately they'll be gerei tzedek. They're part of the fabric of the Jewish community, to our dismay. And my psak is, what I say now is a big chiddush. According to the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch, if a ger comes and he says, I want to be Jewish, we're supposed to turn him away. That was true for 2,000 years. He came from nowhere and is going back to nowhere. I will never see him again. Koshem Gerim Yisrael Kisapachas. But in Eretz Yisrael, and in many Jewish communities around the world, and modern communities, these kids are part of the club. They're here to stay. Most of them are Jewish fathers and not Jewish mothers. And they will marry. And it's very likely they'll marry Jewish girls or Jewish boys. And I say, Koshem gerem liyasol kesapachas, Koshem goyim liyasol kesa'ez v'ba'eres. And if the two options are a ger or a goy, we definitely would like him to be a ger tzedek. So with no compromise on geras, no compromising the halachas of geras, but I think it's a mitzvah to reach out to these children and try to be mekan of them. Most of them have a Jewish father, and try to turn them into gerei tzedek, because they're here and they're here to stay. Unlike 2,000 years, a ger came from nowhere, and if we said goodbye, he just went back to nowhere. So the Rebbe doesn't have the option of teaching the Jewish kids and not teaching the others. They're all here together. They're sitting in the classroom. The mitzvah to teach Torah to Jewish children overrides the Aveda not to teach Torah to non-Jewish children. That would be my reasoning. But Rav Moshe says there is no lifnei yever. And that contradicts this tshuva. So coming back to Yaakov Avinu. Was Yaakov Avinu needed to take into account how Esav will respond? So I want to say a chiddush now. What do Jewish people do when they have a monetary dispute? what are they supposed to do? Go to Beis Din. So we have a Beis Din. And many times people come to Beis Din and they start apologizing. It's the first time I ever was in Beis Din, you know. And I say, you don't need to apologize. When Jews have a monetary disagreement, this is the place to be. Instead of fighting in the stairwell, instead of fighting in shul, instead of fighting on the street, this is the place to be. You can't go to court. Tzerkois. If you have any disagreements, this is the place to be. But why is a person allowed to bring another to Beis Din and he doesn't need to be choishish for arbonas ponim? Nobody calls that other party to Beis Din just to tell the Beis Din what a lovely neighbor he is and how much he likes it. You don't go to Beis Din to say that. And every claim in Beis Din always would involve wrongdoing. Either he took a loan and he didn't pay, or he stole, or he caused you damage. And it's always halbonas ponim. So why? For 50 shekel? For $100? Why don't you know not to be choishish to halbonas ponim? And the other question is, dinei shavua. Moide b'miktzas chayiv shavua, edechot chayiv shavua, shomrim chayiv shavua. How could I make another person swear and I'm not choishish? I'm machshalim b'shavua shekel. Why isn't there lifnei v'lo yisit mechshel? So the answer is a simple one. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdoif. And anything that involves asiyas hatzedek v'hamishpot is not an avera. If we need to be choishish for our bonus ponim, leis din ve'leis dayin ve'ish esrei'ehu chayim belohu. Tzedek is a mitzvah. And when people have a dispute, their mitzvah is to go to Beis Din. If they want to be moichel, they want to work out a compromise on their own, tovei broch al roisham, that's the best. But if they can't agree, then they go to Beis Din. And that's din Torah. And chiyuv shvua is a din Torah. But even beyond the scope of Beis Din, a person has the right to stand up for his rights, and he bears no responsibility what the other party will do and how he will respond. So Reb Shlomo Zalman writes in Mincha Shloim Chelek Aleph Siman Zayin, I lend money to a person, and I ask him to pay his loan, and I know the person. And whenever I ask him to pay his loan, he curses. Do I have a problem with lifnei v'lo yisit mechshel? I'm machshalim and lo sekalel. He curses b'shem shemayim. And Reb Shlomo Zalman says, and I agree with him 100%, I don't need to be mevater on my money because the crazy man curses. That's his responsibility. I'm not causing him to do so. It's a response that I know it will happen. So why is it different than Kedushin Lamed Beis? Because Kedushin Lamed Beis, the father has no benefit out of tearing that garment. He just wants to test the son. But I have the right to collect my money. It's my monetary right. And I don't need to lose my money and my privilege because he will curse. That's his responsibility and not mine. So I think the same would go, I rent a place and I want to daven. It's not my responsibility if she's going to put out the light. So Yaakov Avinu is entitled to get those brachas. And he's entitled to the b'chayra. And therefore, he has no responsibility. How Esav might respond.
If they're borrowing the house, not renting it. If they're borrowing the house and not renting it.
Would be the same. Would be the same. When I say right, it doesn't necessarily mean a monetary right. But it's my benefit and I am entitled to this. I don't need to lose my entitlement and my rights and my interests, especially if it's a mitzvah, because another person might do an aveira. So Yaakov Avinu knows he is entitled to the b'chayra and the brochas, and therefore he bears no responsibility. How I submit respond. And why is Yankov so convinced that he needs those brachas? So whenever we learn Parshas Toldos, I think every year, we need to learn this Parsha al Pi HaZohar. It's always kedai to learn al Pi HaZohar, but especially this Parsha, because when we learn this Parsha al Pi Pshutoi, it's somewhat troubling. We need to learn from the Avos. Torah's Moshe, our Torah Kedosha, is defined twice in Novi, in Sefer Yeshua and Sefer Shmuel, as Sefer HaYoshar. And in Avodah Zorah Chafei, the Gemara says, why is the Torah called Sefer HaYoshar? Sefer Bereshis. That's Sefer Shel Avos. Va'avoseinu Yeshorim Hoyu. They were the most honest, straightforward, trustworthy people in history. And that is why our Torah is called Sefer HaYoshar. When we learn this parsha, Yankov Avinu doesn't come across as so Yosher. Taking advantage of a person's desperation when he's crying, I'm dying from thirst, give me something to drink, and say, okay, first sell the b'choira, doesn't seem the right thing to do. Ayin Yevomes Kuvov Amid Aleph, and the suga of Ma'aboides, if Esav would be a real Amdin, Esav would tell Yankov, the document you have, a Mechiras B'choira, is worth Keklipas Hashum. Because the Gemara says in Yevomes Kuvav, if a person is running away and other people are running after him, and he comes to the river or to the lake, and there's a ferry, and he asks the conductor, take me to the other side, people are chasing me, they want to hurt me. And the guy that runs the ferry says, $100. And he says, of course, I'll pay you on the other side. Gets to the other side, he could say, Meshatani b'cho. Forget it. Because it was your obligation to help me get away. And therefore, I owe you nothing. And you forced me to say, and I said, and it's totally void. And that's the halacha. Esav might turn around and tell Yankov, you took advantage of my desperation. You should have given me to drink without any pay, and therefore, this transaction is void. That's a separate discussion. Obviously, Esav wasn't aware of the Gemara in Yevomes Daf Kuvav. But it doesn't seem to be the right thing, and especially what they did with Yitzchak. So Rivka and Esav conspired to fool the old blind man and pretend that Yankov is Esav. So we need to learn the Zohar. When you learn the Zohar, everything gets a different perspective. So the Zohar explains, why does Yankov want the B'choira? Not because he wants a double portion of the Yerusha. Yankov knows that the brachas are designated for the B'choira. B'choira and brocha are the same letters, the Zohar writes, just a different sequence. And Yankov needs the B'choira to get the brachas. And why does Yankov need the brachas? So the Zohar says something amazing. Yankov, during his lifetime, was blessed 4 times. He had 4 brachas. The most important ones were this week's parsha. Ba ochicho b'mirma. Tagamunkala says b'chochmasa, with wisdom. Brachas number 2, Parshas V'yishlach. You all remember. Vayovek ish imoy. Yankov fights and struggles with Sorei Shel Esav, with an angel representing Esav. And then the Malach says, Shalcheni ki oro shachar, egiya zmani lo imashiro. Yankov says, you're going nowhere. Lo yeshalechacho, ki em berechtoni. And the angel benches Yankov. Number 2. At the end of this week's parsha, when Rivka becomes aware that Esav plans to kill Yankov, Rivka tells Yankov, you need to run away. Go to Lavan, to Padan Aram. And then Yankov comes before Yitzchak and he benches him again. Number 3. And in next week's parsha, when Yankov is on the way to Lavan, he has a Gilui, a Kodesh Baruch Hu benches him. So those are the 4 brachas that Yankov had. The Zohar goes on to explain that Yankov had a difficult life with Esav and then with Lavan. Bikesh Yankov Leisha Vishal V'kofetz olav rugzoi shel Yosef. For himself, Yaakov takes the lesser brachas, the one that is least significant, and that is the second set of brachas that Yitzchak benched Yaakov when he's on the way to love. That's for all his travails and his difficulties and his suffering. What does Yaakov do with the other three brachas? Klal Yisrael Edoros Olam. And in the merit of one of the brachas of Yaakov, we were zoiche to Geulas Mitzrayim and Beis Hamikdash Harishon. And the second set of brachas, we were zoiche to be redeemed, to get out of Golas Bavel and Bayis Hasheni. And this Parshas brachas, the one of Mirma, are still standing for us. And only b'schusam will we be zoiche to the Geula Shlema and to Bayis Hashlishi and Tikkun Olam b'Malchus Shaddai. And Yaakov knows this Beruach HaKodesh, and Rivka knows this Beruach HaKodesh. And that's a Kodesh Baruch Hu's master plan. And there's no other way that Klal Yisrael will be Zoiche to a Geula Shalema. Because you heard from me many times, we are the people of miracles. Al pi derech hateva, we shouldn't have been around. But derech hakeva, in the normal course of human events, we should have been 2 or 3 pages in the history books. Somewhere between ancient Troy and the Roman Empire, the history book would say, there was a people that called themselves the Jews, and they claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And they rose on the scene of history so-and-so BC, and their demise was so-and-so AC, before count, and after count. And that's the story of the Jews. That would be normal. We are the people of miracles. Against all odds, thousands of years of persecution, anti-Semitism, and what we're seeing now in the world is the ugliest manifestation of anti-Semitism. It's just hating the Jews, has no other understanding. So hundreds of thousands of Muslims and Arabs were killed in the last decade. In Syria, when Arab killed Arab. In Yemen, hundreds of thousands of Arabs were killed and nobody demonstrated. Nobody caused an outcry in the entire world. It's only when they kill us and we respond. So anti-Semitism has been with us since Yaakov and Esav. Always. But derech hateva, we shouldn't have been here. It's against all odds. That's a miracle. And the miracle is in the schus of the brachas that Yaakov gave us. So Yaakov Avinu knows this. It has nothing to do with him. It's not for himself. He has no personal interest. He knows that this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan, and this is the way it needs to be. You're probably all familiar with a Mama Chazal, Halacha biyadua she'esav soina leYankov. What type of a halacha is this? Usually when we say halacha, it's halacha l'maisa. So who was this halacha given to? To Esav? Legitimizing him to hate Yaakov? What do Chazal mean when they say halacha? Biyadua she'esav Yaakov. Anybody here familiar with Rabbi Menachem Zembe? Who was Rabbi Menachem Zembe? Does anybody know? Well, if this would be a Polish yeshiva, not a Litvish one, everybody would know about Rabbi Menachem Zembe. Who was Rabbi Menachem Zembe? What? He was killed in the ghetto? That's the only thing you know about him. 1 million other people were killed in the ghettos, besides Rabbi Menachem Zembe. Yeah, he was killed in ghetto Varsha. Shem Yinkum Domoy. He was the greatest gadol in Poland, pre-Holocaust Poland. And I say the greatest, #1. Nobody compared to the Menachem Zembe. He was a phenomenal Goan and a Ilui. And the entire Litvish world was in a spoil about his genius. So the Menachem Zembe once explained, Halacha means Halacha l'Moshe Messinai. And what is unique about Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, it defies Svora. It's not based on Svora. It is what it is. Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, and don't try to understand and don't try to argue. Chukim chokakti, gzeres gezarti. That's the nature of Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. So the Menachem Zember, relating to his day and age, made an interesting comment. The right hates us because they say we're Bolsheviks. We're communists, we're socialists. The socialists hate us because they say we're capitalists. We belong to the right. So who are we? Are we socialists? Are we Catholics? Are we right? Are we left? It's confusing. Everybody hates us for another reason. And those reasons contradict one another. So obviously, it's somewhat like Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, defies explanation. And it really defies explanation. Why do they hate us? So Megillah, the Gemara, has an interesting moshel about Haman and Achashverosh. Moshel Balatel v'Balacharitz. Two neighbors had backyards. One has a little mound in the middle of his backyard, and he wants the yard to be a flat yard. He wants to play ball, and the mound interferes. The other has a pit in the middle of his backyard, and he wants some dirt to fill it up. So the Balatel and the Balacharitz make an agreement. Why do you need to buy land to fill up your pit? And I need to pay someone to take away my extra dirt. Let's make an agreement. You take mine, you fill up your hole. So sometimes they hate us because we're on top of society. We are the Chachamim. We are the successful ones. We have the money. We have the influence. And other times they look down at us. We're the vermin. We bring the lice. We're the dirty ones. And everybody hates us for another reason. It defies explanation. So that's the Bala pit, when I down deep in the ground, or we're on top of the hill. Everybody hates us, and that's like Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. And that is what we're seeing today with this ugly face of anti-Semitism in the entire world. So we look around in the world, and we say, Ein lanu lehishoin, ela al Avinu shebeshamayim. My great Rebbe, the Kloisenberger Rebbe, used to say, an interesting comment. He says, usually people say in such a nebuchadnezzar tone, Ein lanu lehishoin, ela al Avinu shebeshamayim. We're such a nebuch. We have no one to rely on, only on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kloisenberger Rebbe say, you need to shout that out loud and clear. Lift your heads. Ein lanu lishon ela al Avinu shebeshamayim. Avinu shebeshamayim is not a Meshenas Konarotzes. And if he is on our side, we need no one else. When he's on our side, we need no one else. Baruch Hashem, yesh lanu al mi lishon al Avinu shebeshamayim. So when we come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in times of crisis and of war, we learn more, we learn better, we daven more, we daven better, we do tzedakah, and we once again turn back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then we feel confident. Ein lanu lehishoin ela al Avinu shebeshamayim, v'yesh lanu lehishoin al Avinu shebeshamayim. And that gives us strength, and that gives us confidence. And b'siyata d'shmaya, we will overcome this period. Keep on learning. And as I said, daven better, daven more, learn better, learn more. Learn Musar, come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and b'siyata d'shmaya, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will end this war. V'notati sholem ba'oretz, u'shechaftem ve'ein machrid. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheru v'yomeinu. Amen.